Imagine joy, pure, unadulterated happiness. Now try anger, fiery and hot. How about sorrow, deep and mournful? What about professionalism? What emotion or emotions do we see now? Let's talk more on emotions. In our last videos, we talked about knowledge, skills, and behavior. What will matter most for each of us will depend on our personal situation, our goals, and our journey. We covered a handful of general abilities that are useful to start with that can serve as a foundation to build off of. For behaviors in particular, we touched on how we present ourselves, what our actions are on the surface. How about what's on the inside? Our emotions are natural. We all have them. We all can feel a wide range of emotions, mixed emotions, even contradicting emotions. There is truth to our emotions. They hold value. They serve as an important purpose to help guide our actions. When we weigh and judge what we should do next, there is a certain wisdom to checking how we feel, why we feel it, and what, if anything, we should do because of it. Do we lean into our excitement in the moment, or take some time to calm down? Do we funnel our anger and frustration into the work at hand, or does it need a lighter touch and best to save it for a sunnier day? Emotions make the world more vibrant and beautiful. We are far more interesting because of it, and our work, our communities, local governments as a whole are more dynamic because of them. And yet, we treat emotions as unprofessional. Somehow, more than a few of us have landed on the conclusion that a lack of emotion, a negative of emotion, is the ideal. There are times we should celebrate, times we should get offended. If there is something praiseworthy, we can praise it. Or if there is something contemptible, then we ought to be able to have some contempt, and not have rational responses treated as anything but. When we treat passion, fervor, dedication, and drive as liabilities, as unbecoming, the world gets a little less vibrant. In a status quo that sees emotions, whether joy, anger, sadness, excitement, as unprofessional and unbecoming, to express and validate emotions is to resist. It's why a flash mob can be so refreshing or jarring for people to suddenly dance in public. It's why art, a mere image on a wall with a simple expression, can feel so bold and defiant. It's why the push for mental health is so profound, and why it continues to face an uphill march, as in so many places we're still not meant to admit we're not doing okay, to show weakness, to be vulnerable. How are each of us feeling? Do we feel free to express it fully? If not, why? What will we be resisting against? Now that we've started to embrace emotions, get closer to them, let's take a step back at the strategy of it all. Let's start with the question: who doesn't need emotions? Who doesn't need to rely on their emotions to get their way? Who has the power, the influence, the authority, the information? Who can calmly and collectedly make a request and assume it'll happen? Or if it doesn't, there'll be a good explanation. A similar but distinct question: who benefits when we discredit emotions? When someone's emotions, whether strong or light, whether positive or negative, whether expressive or reserved, gets labeled as being emotional in a way to suggest that being emotional is a bad thing, who is rewarded? And lastly, who benefits when how we feel matters? Who gets helped out a bit if feelings of frustration and discontent is a valid data point? Who has a fighting chance if a passionate plea to the elected officials is taken seriously, is given weight and considered? This is not to say that only emotions matter. This is not to say that we are not responsible for how we act. After all, behavior was our last theme. This is to point out that when emotions are on the table, when feelings are allowed as one source of information, the situation can change, and it may change for the better. For an example, let's consider sidewalks. Sidewalks are great. They help us get from point A to point B. Now imagine we've received a complaint about a street with broken, uneven sidewalks, with pictures to share. Imagine too that the letter is heavy with frustrations, claims that the government doesn't care, and they're jerks, and they need to do something now because this person pays their taxes, and our salaries are paid with those taxes, therefore they're our boss. You know, typical stuff for us public servants. Now imagine sitting in a room where all this is explained, and people laugh it off, or just shrug it off and go on to the next order of business. Just another disgruntled resident, nothing to be done. What now? Do we just smile and nod and accept that sidewalk's not going to have anything done about it? We may give a cookie-cutter answer about a long line of other public improvement projects, ambiguous claims about funding putting the burden on them, if only we received more taxes. How do we help? How do we actually help? Well, we can validate their emotions. Even if we may not agree with all the things they said, even if we wish they had more tact, is it really so wrong to be mad about bad sidewalks? Are at least their emotions something we can understand and accept? If we can accept their frustration, then there's a chance we may take it seriously. Even if we still determine we can't fund it for the foreseeable future, I bet our response will be more genuine, more informative, more empathetic if we accept, even appreciate, their disappointment. It is about empathy. It is about us building real human connections, not lifeless exchanges. It is a matter of dignity. It is about validation, respect, to have a local government that cares. It is about being our whole selves, and not have part of it stripped away over outdated notions that we're cogs in a machine. For the optional exercise, imagine displays of different emotions in your workplace. Run a scenario for each, and think how you can stand up for and professionally justify them to your team. The book lists a few examples, and we can always come up with more. Up next, we slide over to a sense of levity.